Hello, friends. Thank you for taking the time to watch my presentation. Our plan today is to explore how sex education in United States schools has evolved since I graduated from high school in 1996. As of September this year, I will be the parent of two high school students, so I'm very interested in how sex education in today's world compares to what I experienced nearly 3 decades ago. This presentation not only connects to my personal life, but is also inclusive of broader themes in psychology, development, and public health. We have a packed agenda that will cover the following topics. In addition to explaining why I chose this particular topic, we'll look at what sex education was like in the 1990s and compare that to what it's like today. We'll talk about the relevance of sex education to psychology. Since this is a controversial topic, we'll discuss why and some of the challenges that are current in sex education. We'll see what the latest research says. We'll explore some solutions and best practices being recommended. And as a little bonus, we'll discuss how diversity, equity, and inclusion are integrated into sex ed. And this will help us understand how far sex education has come and where it needs to grow. So now that we have that covered, let's talk about why I chose this particular topic. I chose to explore this topic because sex education plays a critical role in shaping young people's understandings of relationships, identity, and health. Having teenage boys currently enrolled in high school, I have a personal stake in knowing what they are being taught. Additionally, from a psychological standpoint, sex education affects emotional development, self-esteem, and decision-making. The differences between the 1990s and today reveal how cultural shifts, public health research, and political debates influence what is taught in the classroom. Now that we covered why I chose this topic, let's dive into what sex education was like in the 90s. When preparing for this presentation, I could not stop thinking about this scene from the 2004 film classic, Mean Girls.
Don't have sex, because you will get pregnant and die. Don't have sex in the missionary position. Don't have sex standing up. Just don't do it. Promise? Okay, everybody take some rubbers.
I kept thinking about this scene for two reasons. First, it's hilarious. Second, it's actually true. In a 2017 position paper, John Santilli and his colleagues explained how sex education in the 1990s was dominated by abstinence-only until marriage programs. These programs often relied on fear-based messaging to discourage sexual activity, emphasizing the risk of STIs and unintended pregnancies while largely ignoring contraception and healthy relationship skills. There was never a mention of LGBTQIA+ identities because they were either completely excluded or treated as deviant. The curriculum typically lacked nuance and failed to reflect the realities of adolescents' experiences. This approach has been widely criticized by health professionals for being ineffective and potentially harmful. So now that we talked about that, let's talk about where sex education stands today. Today, many school systems are adopting comprehensive sex education, although implementation varies widely. A 2016 study by Laura Lindberg and her colleagues documented shifts in how adolescents receive sex education. They found that while more schools began including instruction on contraception and consent, there was also a decline in formal sex education in some states, particularly for marginalized groups. Comprehensive sex education now often includes information about gender identity, sexual orientation, emotional wellness, and communication skills. But access to this information is inconsistent depending on local policies and politics. So now let's discuss how all of this is relevant to psychology. From a psychological point of view, sex education is about more than preventing pregnancy and disease. It contributes to healthy identity and formation, emotional regulation, and interpersonal relationships. The 2013 study Creating Comprehensive, Youth-Centered, Inclusive Sex Education emphasizes the importance of inclusive, youth-centered sex education in supporting the mental health of adolescents, specifically those who identify as LGBTQIA+. When students are informed, they are less likely to experience shame and more likely to make safe, empowered choices. Next up, we'll cover controversies and challenges currently faced in sex education. Despite the benefits of comprehensive sex education, it still is a deeply polarizing issue. There's a 2019 article by Chelsea Prolux and her colleagues that discusses how recent political developments have led to restrictions on discussing gender and sexuality in some school systems. Laws like Florida's Don't Say Gay bill reflect a broader trend of pushing back against inclusive education. At the same time, some districts continue to receive funding for abstinence-only programs, even though research indicates that these are less effective than comprehensive approaches. This patchwork of policies results in unequal access to vital information depending on geography and community values. So let's start wrapping this up by talking about what the research says. A growing body of research supports the effectiveness of comprehensive sex education. The previously referenced John Santilli paper from 2017 highlights that these programs are associated with delayed initiation of sexual activity. There are many benefits to this, including reduced rates of STIs, reduced teen pregnancy, and an increased use of contraception. Additionally, psychological benefits, such as greater emotional readiness and improved communication and consent practices, have also been noted. In addition, the 2020 National Sex Education Standards, published by the Future of Sex Education Initiative, offer a research-based framework for inclusive, age-appropriate instruction. These standards emphasize the importance of addressing not just the physical, but also the emotional and social dimensions of sexual education. Now that we know all of this, what are some solutions and best practices that are currently being recommended? The 2008 study by Marla Eisenberg and her colleagues, Parents' Beliefs About Sexuality Education in Schools, showed that a majority of parents support school-based sex education, especially when it includes topics like communication, respect, and contraception. Experts recommend trauma-informed, medically accurate, and culturally responsive curriculum that begins in early adolescence. Teacher training and community engagement are key to ensuring consistency and effectiveness. When educators are equipped with the right tools and parents are informed and supportive, students will benefit from a safe and affirming learning environment. In conclusion, after confirming with my local school district, I am confident that my children are being taught a comprehensive and inclusive sex education curriculum and not a Coach Carr from Mean Girls style class. It's clear to me that sexual education has undergone substantial changes since the 1990s, moving from a narrow abstinence-only model to a more holistic and inclusive approach. In some, but not all places. This progress is promising, however, access remains unequal, and political resistance continues to threaten these gains. As a parent and student of psychology, I believe that advocating for comprehensive, inclusive, and evidence-based sex education is essential for the well-being of future generations. I'd like to take this opportunity to express my sincere gratitude to you for taking the time to view my presentation. I hope you found the content to be extremely helpful and informative, and I hope you have an amazing day.